Okay, so here's a basic introduction to painting 4 different types of water. Just got the back of a painting here, and I've just stuck it down because this is a practice. It doesn't need to be on the best paper. You could do it on a piece of cheap watercolour paper or do it on the back like I've done here. I've split it into 4 blocks and I've just done a very simple mountain and sky, and I've just painted them in and they're dry. Okay, so the first one I'm going to do, because I want it to dry off, is this one, which is wet on dry with a still glaze. Okay, so we're just going to take the same brown colour and we're going to paint a reflection of the mountain, roughly as it is above the water, but slightly paler. Okay, and reflections tend to be darker nearer to the object, nearer to the thing that's reflecting, and lighter as you come away. So if you put a little bit more pigment just on the water's edge, and then it's lighter as it comes away, and we're going to leave that to dry off. Okay, so this is wet on dry rough water, and this is just wet on dry. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to paint that reflection in like that, and we're going to let that one also dry. And hopefully by the time you've done this, and remember again, just put a little bit more pigment nearer to the object that's reflecting. Okay, so that's still not dry, so I'm just going to give it a quick blast of the hairdryer. 1 second. So, right, so the next thing is to take a mop brush or something that's got a bigger head on it, like this, and we're just going to dunk it in the water, and we're going to pick up some of that blue sky. I used a cerulean blue, and I'm just going to switch my palette around so that I've got a section of the palette just to mix a little bit. So there's the blue. I'm just getting it on the brush here, and I want a thin mix, so it's got to be watery, but it's got to fill the brush. Okay, again, if you're not sure of how thin to do it, just test it out on a scrap piece of paper. It needs to have some pigment in it, but not a huge amount, so it's a light blue. So this is wet on dry, so this is now dry, and we're going to apply wet to it. And this is a still glaze. So when you glaze something, you need a big brush and you need to work quickly without rubbing, because if you rub, this will come up. So the quicker that you can get the paint on and the least strokes you can use, the better. So 1, 2, and you can see there that now you have a watery looking setting. That's just with a simple application of 1 coat of colour. If it's not strong enough, let it dry off and then reapply it. So that's a simple wet on dry still water glaze method. Okay, the next one we're just going to do wet on dry. So this is dry now. So what we can do is just pick up the blue colour again, and we can just apply it. Now you can do this with a bigger brush if you want to, but we're going to apply it. I'm using a smaller brush because I'm going to apply it very much in the glazing method, but I'm just going to put different colours down. So this is wet on dry with a smaller brush, and I'm going to take some different blue and add that in. And you can leave some gaps. Can you see how there are some gaps in the painting? And that will give the effect of the light catching the surface. And remember also again that it should be darker nearer the object. So that's a wet on dry application. Okay, you let that dry. So that's slightly rougher water. That is really still. The next one we're going to do is this wet on wet one. Now with wet on wet, you need to wet the paper first. That's what it means. You wet the paper first. So prepare your colour. So get some colour mixed up and then wet with a large brush. So it's nice and quick. So it's not going to dry out on you. And then this is going to be really blurry, okay? So what we need to do first is we need to put on our brown. So this is going to run like this, can you see? So we need to go up. So it's going to be like a blurry representation of that hill. And then we put the blue in. So this is like for a blurry, misty, soft day. Okay, there you go. Just let it do what it does. Let the magic of the watercolour happen. Push it right up to that edge if you can. Don't rub it too much. If you rub it too much, the paper will come up. Leave that to dry. Now this is wet on dry rough. So we're going to take some of this brown. Whoops. Just going to add a little bit of. So this is different, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to do sort of S, almost like S shapes, like this. So you can see I'm still following the pointed shape of the hill in the distance. And then we're going to take some of that cerulean blue and we're going to repeat the exercise, but we're going to take some of it into, so again, S shapes. Make sure you go in there. You can take it over the edge and then it doesn't just look like it's going to the edge. Can you see how that looks a bit stunted? So take it over the edge. Pick up some darker blue maybe. Just because it's rough, a rough water, you would get some darker shadows just clipping the edges of the waves in the water, in the same way that you would get a little bit of dark brown in places like this. Okay, there you go. So there are 4 simple ways of creating watery effects. Have a go, have a play. You can introduce more detail, but obviously it takes time because you need to be quick. Like this one, you need to be quick. So it's just practice. Practice on a small scale and then build up slowly. And as you build up, you can add more detail. Like you can put clouds in, you can put trees in, all that sort of thing. But just start simple and see if you can grasp these details. And this one is the one that we use in our finished picture. Okay, good luck.